The wrestling world is in absolute chaos right now, and no, this time, it's not about what went down in the ring. This is a battle unlike anything we've ever seen before. The war is no longer being fought with suplexes or spears, it's being waged with words, social media posts, and declarations of war that have rocked the very foundation of pro wrestling. And at the center of it all, Jon Moxley, the man once known as Dean Ambrose, is back with a vengeance, and he's targeting one man in particular, Paul Heyman. Let me take you back to a moment that has set the wrestling world on fire. It all started after WrestleMania, a night that was already making headlines for shocking betrayals, unexpected power shifts, and title changes that left us all stunned. But then came the aftermath. The chaos wasn't over. No, it was just beginning. After Roman Reigns' brutal dethroning at WrestleMania, Paul Heyman, never one to shy away from the spotlight, took to Twitter. The message was simple, cold, and, as always, packed with venom. On screen, a tweet by Paul Heyman appears. "We pumped out a rebel and dethroned a tribal chief." To most, it was just another gloating post from Paul Heyman, the so-called wise man of WWE's Bloodline, basking in the aftermath of Roman's loss. But what Paul Heyman probably didn't expect was the storm he had just unleashed. For one man, it wasn't just another tweet. It was a trigger. A direct shot. A challenge. That man? Jon Moxley. And that's when the world was forced to pay attention. Jon Moxley, an unpredictable, dangerous force in the wrestling business, was not going to let Heyman's words slide. No, he wasn't going to let it be forgotten in the noise of social media rants. He was going to respond in a way only Moxley could. A few hours after Heyman's tweet, a video surfaced. It was raw, dark, and unsettling. The setting was grim, a dimly lit gym, with the sounds of metal weights clanging in the background. No crowds, no fancy production, just Moxley. And he was mad. The bruises on his face told a story. The blood on his knuckles showed he had been in some serious battles. Moxley stood there alone, his gaze colder than ice. His eyes burned with a rage that seemed to pierce through the screen. Without saying a word, he held up a phone, Paul Heyman's tweet displayed on the screen. No commentary. No words. Just the tweet. And then, without hesitation, Moxley hurled that phone to the ground with such force it shattered on impact. The room went silent. Every viewer was holding their breath. Moxley didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped forward. Slowly. Methodically. And with a sickening crunch, he placed his boot on the remains of the phone. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and the screen, once displaying Heyman's gloating message, was now a pile of broken pieces beneath his foot. And then, finally, Moxley spoke. Jon Moxley speaking, his voice cold, raw, and dripping with disdain. "Moxley, you think you're clever, Paul. You think you know what's coming next. You can't break a man who's already been broken. You can't destroy someone who doesn't give a damn about your games. So you want to play with fire, huh? Well, let me show you what happens when you piss off the wrong man." The room was silent once again, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Moxley had spoken, and his words hung in the air like a threat. This wasn't a promo. This wasn't some wrestling script or storyline. This was personal. This was Moxley, a man who had been through the darkest of times in his career, now unleashing all that rage on Paul Heyman. And with that, the stakes had just been raised. Let's take a step back. To understand the weight of Moxley's words, we need to understand who he is. Moxley's rise in WWE was nothing short of spectacular. As Dean Ambrose, he captured the hearts of millions of fans. He was unpredictable, wild, and always had a way of making the chaos of the wrestling world feel like it was happening just for him. But when Moxley left WWE in 2019, it was more than just a departure, it was a statement. He wasn't just leaving a company. He was leaving behind the shackles that WWE had placed on him. Moxley had felt stifled in WWE. He had felt like he was being controlled, restrained, and unable to express the raw, dangerous side of himself that fans had come to love. So, when he left, he made a vow. A vow that he would never let anyone control him again. Not Vince McMahon. Not Paul Heyman. Not anyone. And when Moxley made the leap to AEW, he became a new man. A man unchained. A man who would stop at nothing to redefine himself and his place in professional wrestling. But it wasn't just about AEW. It wasn't just about proving he could survive outside WWE. It was about proving that Moxley was the most unpredictable, dangerous man in wrestling. Period. In AEW, Moxley found himself. No longer confined by the limitations of the WWE system, he was free to be who he truly was. And the fans loved it. Moxley became the face of AEW, the champion of chaos. Whether it was his brutal matches, his hard-hitting brawls, or his cold, calculated promos, he was the man everyone had to reckon with. And now, after years of being free, here he was, being pulled back into the WWE orbit by none other than Paul Heyman. But why now? Why the sudden resurfacing of this old rivalry between Moxley and Heyman? To understand the answer, we have to look at what's been happening in WWE. Roman Reigns, once the tribal chief of WWE, has been dethroned. And Paul Heyman, the man who has been at Reigns' side through thick and thin, now finds himself in the middle of an uncertain future. Reigns has lost his crown, and Heyman's words have drawn the attention of the one man who has always lived outside the established order of WWE, Jon Moxley. So, what does this mean for WWE? What does it mean for AEW? And what does it mean for the future of Jon Moxley? The lines between WWE and AEW have never been more blurred. Wrestling fans are chomping at the bit to see what's next. And as Moxley's response to Heyman goes viral, the wrestling world waits with bated breath. Moxley has just declared war. Not in the ring, not in the scripted promos, but in the world of social media. He's drawn a line in the sand. WWE and AEW are on alert, knowing that Moxley is a man who will do whatever it takes to make a statement. He has no loyalty to any company. His loyalty is to chaos, to destruction, and to proving that he is, and always will be, the most dangerous man in the world of professional wrestling. The question now is simple: what happens next? Will this escalate into a battle between AEW and WWE, with Moxley at the center of it all? Will Moxley's war with Paul Heyman lead to the return of an old rivalry that fans have been dying to see again? Or will it trigger a new wave of chaos that could reshape the entire wrestling landscape forever? One thing is for sure, the war between Jon Moxley and Paul Heyman is far from over. And when these two forces collide, there's no telling who will be left standing. Stay tuned, because this war is just beginning, and we'll be here to cover every twisted moment of it. Until then, keep your eyes on the ring, and keep your finger on the pulse of wrestling news, because things are about to get even crazier than we ever thought possible.